December 6th. St. Nicholas, Bishop of Myra. St. Nicholas, Bishop of Myra in Lycia, a province of Asia Minor, was a native of that country and was brought up by his virtuous parents in innocence and piety. At an early age, he applied himself with great zeal to the pursuit of learning, in which he made rapid progress. But his principal endeavor was to perfect himself in the practice of virtue by striving constantly to subdue his passions and refer all his acts to God. His gentleness, humility, modesty, and unbounded charity were the admiration of everyone and caused him to be often proposed as an example for the imitation of the young. For the same reason, he has always been regarded in the Church as one of the special patrons and models of Christian youth. Having lost his parents while he was yet young, he devoted his ample inheritance to different works of charity, which he sought by pious artifices to conceal from the eyes of men. Hearing that the 3 daughters of a gentleman of reduced position were in danger of falling into an evil life through want of a sufficient dowry to settle them in honorable marriage, he visited their abode by night and threw into the house by the window a purse of gold, which was discovered in the morning and enabled the distressed father to arrange the settlement of his eldest child. The same deed of charity was repeated a second and a third time, but on the last occasion, the generous donor was discovered, a watch having been set for the purpose, and our humble saint was deeply mortified at beholding himself the object of the admiration and eulogies of his fellow citizens. Upon the death of his uncle, the Bishop of Myra, who had already ordained him priest, Nicholas, in order to escape the danger of being elected in his place, abandoned his country and retired into Palestine. After visiting the holy places with great devotion, he took up his abode in a cavern among the rocks, where it was said that the Holy Family had passed a night on their way to Egypt. Here, after a time, he received an intimation from heaven that it was the will of God that he should return to Myra. He accordingly set out at once for that city, and upon his arrival retired to a monastery, where he proposed to spend the remainder of his days in solitude and prayer. Meanwhile, it came to pass that his uncle's successor in the See of Myra departed this life, upon which the bishops of the province met together to choose a successor. While they were yet undetermined as to the most suitable candidate, a venerable prelate in the assembly, being inspired by God, declared that it was the divine will that they should elect for the post the first man of the name of Nicholas, who on the following morning should enter the church to pray. A watch was accordingly set, and our saint, who had come to offer his devotions, was immediately taken and consecrated bishop, to the extreme joy of the clergy and people. In this exalted office, Nicholas showed himself the most perfect model of a true and faithful pastor. He was wont to spend almost the whole night in praying at the foot of the altar for himself and his flock. Whenever he offered the holy sacrifice, his face shone with a heavenly light, like that of an angel. The whole of his revenues were devoted to the poor, and if anyone sought him, he was always to be found either in the church, the prison, the hospital, or by the bedside of the sick or dying. During the cruel persecution of Licinius, he was apprehended, loaded with chains, cruelly scourged, and finally sent into exile. But on the defeat of this tyrant by Constantine, he returned in triumph to his flock and was received with unbounded joy by his faithful people. Soon afterwards, he was present at the great council of Nicaea and took part in the condemnation of Arius, being honored by the assembled fathers as one of the most generous confessors of the faith and most illustrious prelates of the Church. To enumerate the miracles of St. Nicholas would be as difficult, says St. John Damascene, as to count the sands of the seashore or the stars of the heavens. In fact, he was the thaumaturgus, or wonder-worker, of his age, at whose prayers or invocation devils were cast out, the sick were healed, tempests were calmed, prisoners were set free, and the dead were raised to life. Nor did his miracles cease with his life, for his tomb became famous throughout the world on account of the wonders which were there wrought and the healing oil which distilled from his sacred relics. This amiable saint and illustrious bishop died after a short illness in the monastery, whither, after bidding adieu to his people, he had retired to prepare for his last passage. His sacred remains were buried in his own cathedral at Myra, but were afterwards removed to Bari in Apulia, where they are still kept with great veneration.